Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of LinkedIn live events for 2025. It's April, it's sunny, it's awesome, it's a lovely day here in Mornington in Victoria, and I can't wait to discuss today's topic, and it is video pre-production. So I'm going to be going through everything that you need to know from start to finish for video pre-production, I should say. And for me, this is one of the most important areas in video production. It's the one where if you get it right, everything after that runs smoothly. But if you get it wrong, or you miss a few steps, or you don't go as thorough and as deep as you probably should, that's when you have a lot of issues come forward later on. And pre-production, it's always been one of my favorite areas for that exact reason, trying to persuade away from having problems later on. But when I produced my documentary recently, that was the number one focus area for me. I knew that if I wanted to produce this 60-minute feature-length documentary, that the pre-production was going to be critical. Because for a video of that length, you need to keep viewers hooked from start to finish. There needs to be a clear storyline, there needs to be a clear plot, you need to know when things need to go high, when things need to be low, and there needs to be a consistent flow, continuity going throughout. And so I've spent maybe 20 to 50 hours on the pre-production for that film, going through what the questions were going to be like for the interviewees, how each question was going to link together so one person can talk and then the next person will follow on and have it all cut up nice and perfectly like that. Broke it down into 10 different chapters, then went even deeper within each of those 10 chapters. And the results obviously turned out very well. The film's been picked up on Fox Sports. But that's just to show you the importance of pre-production. So we're going to go through today. We're going to discuss, first and foremost, the strategy behind videos, because we need to know the strategy behind a video production first before we enter into pre-production. I'll then go through the 11 steps of pre-production that we do for all video campaigns, for all videos, whether it be a singular video or a video as part of a series of videos in a campaign. Go through those 11 pre-production steps that we do on a daily basis. And then finally, we'll look at some of the consequences of not performing thorough video pre-production, because there are a few. And as I mentioned, the whole idea around doing intense pre-production for videos is to remove the possibility of having any of these issues come up down the line, whether it be in production or in the post-production, because the further along that journey that you go from production, post-production, the further along you go, if issues come up further down the line, they're going to be more impactful than they are if they come up earlier in the production process. So let's get into it. First off, video strategy. So this is a really, really important one. Pre-production, the steps remain largely the same. Doesn't matter what type of video you're producing, if it's short form, if it's long form, doesn't matter if you have a certain goal behind it. The steps are going to be much the same. But the strategy is what is going to dictate the overall success of the video. So we need to understand, first and foremost, why we're producing a video, who we're trying to target, what message we're trying to share with them, how we want them to feel, and what action we want them to take after that. 5 questions there. Why are we producing the video? What are we producing? Who are we trying to target? How do we want them to feel? What action do we want them to take? And so, first and foremost, let's look at that one. Why? The why are we producing the video? What's the reason behind producing the video in the first place? I'll list a few options, a few possibilities. This is by no means a restricted list. It can go on. There's many, many other ideas out there. But let's say, for example, looking to use video for a recruitment purpose. So you're wanting to attract some really highly talented staff to your company. Well, the strategy behind producing that type of video is going to be very, very different to, say, a promotional video where you're wanting to promote an event that's coming up, maybe your product or your service offering, maybe your business as a whole. Maybe you have a really monumental occasion coming up that you want to celebrate. If you're going to promote any of those aspects, your strategy and your pre-production is going to be very different to if you're producing a video for recruitment purposes. Likewise, it could be for connection. Maybe you want to forge a really deeper connection between customer and brand. You want to connect them closer together. If that's the case, things are going to be a little bit different again. Same with raising awareness. If you're wanting to raise awareness for your core values or your core beliefs as a business, again, there's going to be a little bit of a slight tweak to the way you go about strategizing the video. That why, the what, the how do you want them to feel, what do you want them to take action with, all those little things are going to change in the details. Likewise, if you're wanting to produce a social proof film, case study, or a testimonial, it's going to be different again. Just like if you're wanting to educate your customers or your key stakeholders. If you're doing a 15-minute YouTube video to educate your stakeholders on a certain topic, for example, I could do this on YouTube and it would be a 30-minute video on pre-production. If I'm wanting to educate people, my approach is going to be very, very different to if I'm wanting to show a bit of a case study or a testimonial for one of our service offerings. It's going to be very, very different. But as I touched on at the start there, the pre-production stays the same. Those 11 steps that we take for all videos, they remain largely the same depending on any of those video types. But the strategy will dictate a few of those elements. So I'll run through some of those examples of where the strategy does dictate. So let's have a look at those social proof films as an example. So if we're doing a testimonial film or if we're doing a case study film, well, that's going to require you as an organization or us on your behalf to get in touch with your customers or key stakeholders within your business and ask them to see if they would like to be involved in the video. It's a very simple procedure, but you won't have to do that if you're doing a promotional film in most cases. Likewise, if you're wanting to do a recruitment film, well, then you may need to involve some of your staff internally to take part in the video to show off the culture of your organization. Something else to consider. If you're doing a promotional video, well, then maybe there's a number of locations that you're going to need to shoot at. So you're going to be incredibly far more intensive with getting a shot list organized, a storyboard organized, doing location scouting. That's going to be a lot more logistically intensive than if you're doing an educational video where it's just like this, a talking head to the camera, and you're just going and publishing that out onto YouTube or any other social media platform. So you can see here, there's some consistencies coming through. Whilst the strategy will dictate and the pre-production will stay the same, it's about how much of a certain step you'll have to go into. Maybe you can skip the location scouting if you don't need that for an educational video, but you may need to go extra deep into the scripting elements. Whereas for a case study film, maybe there's not as much scripting that needs to be involved, and you just need to get a few key questions organized to evoke the responses that you want from the interviewees. Furthermore, you've also got to consider what type of video is it. So we've spoken about the aim behind it, recruitment, education, etc. But what type of video is it? Is it a short form video or is it a long form video? There's these two different types of videos that we can produce here. If it's short form, there's going to be a lot less strategic involvement with it for that individual piece of video. A good short form campaign, of course, has an overarching campaign strategy to it. But for an individual piece of short form content, there may not be a whole lot of strategy behind producing that. Whereas if you're doing a long form video, for an example, 90-second video, there's going to be a lot more pre-production involved with that. You're going to have to go a little bit deeper in certain components of those 11 steps that we'll talk about in just a moment. So all these options together, all those 5 questions at the start, the how, the what, the why, etc., it's all to do with the scale of which you have to do each of those 11 pre-production steps. But you won't be aware of how much you need to do for each of those steps if you're not aware of what type of video is being produced, why you're wanting to produce it, how you want people to feel when they watch it, what actions you want them to take when they watch it. Really, really important to understand and to remember. So then let's look at those 11 pre-production steps that we take. So for every video that we're producing, whether it be a short form piece or a long form piece, whether it's for a singular video or a video part of a wider series of videos as part of a campaign. Each of these 11 steps are undertaken to some degree. And in some circumstances where it's not relevant, we may skip past a few of these steps. First and foremost, it always starts with the budget allowance. So we'll have our conversation with the client. We'll say, okay, what is your allocated budget for this project, for this individual video, for this thing, for this campaign? They'll come forward with a budget that they have for that. And from there, we'll move on to step 2. Step 2 is scripting. So based on doing all the strategic elements beforehand, so those questions that we just touched on before, we'll then be able to decide, okay, how are we going to put this film together? How are we going to put this little short video together? So there'll be some form of element of scripting there, whether it just be jotting down a few ideas, do a bit of a brainstorm, or whether it be writing out a full script for a video, if we're having a voiceover or if we're having multiple interviewees. So there'll be question development as well. That's when we start doing that step. From there, it goes into refining the script. So we've written out the overarching script for the first time. Let's call it the first draft, whether it be the first draft of a script or the first draft of a set of questions. We've got that at the top. Then we go a little bit deeper. Let's refine that further. So by refining it, we're going a little bit deeper. We're going to be more thorough. We're really starting to look at it and say, is this word, is this sentence, is this phrase, is this question the most effective that it can possibly be? I'll give you one really good example from a recent project. We had to create a couple of shorter videos as part of a wider campaign. And it was a 15-second video, a 45-second video, and a 90-second video. And so we were developing the scripts for each of those 3 videos. And you can imagine you have all this information that you're wanting to share, but you have such a minute time period to share it all, especially 15 seconds. There's not many words you can get out in a clear, concise, and effective manner within 15 seconds. So the initial script was so big, then we refined it down further, refined it down further, refined it down further. For this 15-second video, we got it down to 2-3 sentences at the very max. Then we went through each individual word, because at that scale, when you've got such a minute amount of time, every word carries meaning, every word has to have an impact. And so we looked at it word by word and we said, does word A have a better word that we can replace it with? Does word B have a better word that we can replace it with? Combined A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, do all of those words have a greater sentence that we can put together that's going to have more impact, more meaning, more cut through, and be more effective in getting the results that we're wanting for the client? That's the steps that we're going through in that refining step. We're going really, really deep, questioning everything. The first draft is never going to be the last draft. And in most circumstances, the last draft will not even be the last draft, because there'll be even more refinement going through later on in post-production. However, once we've got a pretty good grasp around how it's going to be sounding or the questions that are going to be asked, then it's a case of breaking that script down into further elements. So those elements could be roles, it could be characters, it could be people. If you're doing questions or you're having multiple people speak within a voiceover, it's just breaking them down into individual components, so then we can be as efficient with our time in getting those responses or getting the voiceovers that are required for the video. On to step 5. Based on all of this, we now have a pretty clear scope around what the video or the videos are going to look like. So this is where we'll then look at determining the labor requirements for the production of the video. This will be either looking internally to our own staff and getting our staff members to take part, or if it's going to be a little bit more of a bigger production where we need specialized roles, that's looking to third-party contractors to get them involved. So from there, we've determined the labor requirements. We then will be re-quoting. So if we've gone far over budget based on the current scope, we'll re-quote to the client and say, hey, this is what it's going to cost extra. If the client comes back and says we can't expand our budget any further, that's okay. That's when we go back to the drawing board. We go back up to that step 2, looking at the script and saying, where can we cut this down even further? Where can we cut the scope down of the film even further and reduce what the cost is going to be overall, and just scale it back a little bit? Because that's the beauty of video production. Everything can be scaled up, everything can be scaled down based on budget. So if we've come over budget based on these initial 6 first steps, we can then say, okay, let's just scale back a few things and make it a bit more accommodating for the budget. From there, once all that is ticked off, we'll then gather the team as mentioned, and then we'll do a location scout. So this is particularly important if it's going to be a promotional film where you've got multiple sites that you need to be filming at. One example we did recently, we were filming in 3 different locations for interviews, and we had a few B-roll requirements as well. So it's a case of where we're going to get that B-roll from. We're going to film it at this location, at that location, which is going to be better, which is going to give us the most descriptive elements that are required to make the viewers feel how we want them to feel and take the action we want them to take. All of these different aspects there. And again, the more locations, the higher the cost is going to be. We understand that, the client understands that. So it's keeping that balance really, really important. On to step 9. Once we've followed the location scouting, we know where everything's going to be filmed. It's now a case of creating a storyboard. So it's creating the storyboard, just very rough around how we want it all to flow. And this is just to start building out a little bit of continuity for the film, because one of the concerns and the consequences that can come up of unthorough video pre-production is not having continuity. You want first shot to go onto the second shot to make sense, onto the third shot to make sense, onto the fourth shot, etc. And if you don't have a clear storyboard around how that's going to look, that's when you have a few problems arise. From there, once you've got a clear idea around what the storyboard's going to be, you then create the shot list. That's step 10. You create the shot list. And that way you make sure you get every single shot that you need for the video. And again, this is the same whether it be a short form video or a long form video. You need to get the shots that you need to create that continuity going forward. And then finally, the last step in the pre-production process is a bit of paperwork. There's always paperwork involved. And this is especially important if you're doing multiple locations, if you've got talent involved, like you're hiring external talents, influencers, celebrities, actors, whatever it may be. It's forms, it's getting all the forms filled out, talent agreements, etc., permits for filming at certain locations, getting permissions from local government, from councils, all those type of things. If we're going to go on a massive scale, if you've got to close down roads and stuff like that to film, you've got to get obviously permissions for that. You've got to organize permits. You've got to hire contractors to keep the roads blocked off, etc. So there's a few of those elements there, but that's always one of the last steps in the pre-production process. That's a lot. I can definitely imagine you're all sitting there right now thinking, oh geez, that was excessive. And look, it is to a degree, but the more thorough you are, the better. And if you're looking at those 11 steps, the budget allowance, scripting, refining the script, breaking down the script, determining labor requirements, re-quoting, gathering the team, location scout, storyboard, story list, and forms. If you're looking through all that and thinking, oh geez, I don't know which ones are the most important, there's 4 that I would focus on. If you're going to really scale things back, there's 4 that I would key focus on each time. First and foremost is the scripting. The scripting, whether it be creating an actual voiceover script or whether it be developing questions for interviewees, scripting, incredibly important. From there, the location scout, that's very important if you're doing a bit more of a larger scale film. Storyboarding and then the shot list creation, those are incredibly important. So those 4, the scripting, location scout, storyboarding, and the shot list, definitely my recommendations as the ones to focus on amongst those 11 steps. Now, one of the questions that may be coming up right now is short form versus long form. And as we touched on, short form has a lot less of a logistical requirement when it comes to pre-production than a longer form piece does. But the pre-production aspect is equally as important across both short and long form video. It's just really, really, really important on the long form side of things. I'll give you an example for the short form side of things. Whilst there's not as much that goes into the pre-production for it, you still got to think about things, and particularly the shot list around how you want to produce a video. So let's look at an example. If I'm producing a short form video for one of our clients, the Victorian Athletic League, and I'm filming 5 heats of a race. Let's say it's a 400-meter race. Okay. My brainstorming, my short process of pre-production would be, how am I going to make these 5 heats look like one continuous race? Because we want to create a continuity, right? So across those 5 heats, I will get shots at the start, at the finish line. I'll get shots at the 100-meter bend. I'll get shots at the 200-meter bend. I'll get shots at the 300-meter bend. Have them coming down into the final straight, and get each of those shots across the 5 heats where I can. So I position myself around the track each time. So the first heat might be the start line and the finish line. Second heat, I might be at that first bend at the 100-meter mark. Third heat around the corner at the 200. Fourth heat at the 300. And then the final heat, I might get them coming into the home straight. And through all that, I know that I can then piece together a video that makes it look like it's one whole race. There's continuity. Every shot matches onto the next, and it looks like a seamless put together video. And that's the idea. So even with that short form video where there's not a whole lot of all these elements coming together, there's still a degree of sorts for the pre-production in producing those videos. So what will happen then if you don't take the pre-production seriously, you don't take it thoroughly, you're not going deep enough? There's a few different possibilities that can pop forward. And first up is one that is never a good thing. And when it happens, it's a very annoying thing to have to fix up. That is not having enough shots, because if you don't have enough shots, you just can't even tell the story that you want to tell correctly. Going back to that short form example just provided before with the athletic stuff. If I want to create a full race, make it look like a continuous race across 5 heats, if I don't get shots of the start line and I don't get shots of the finish line, you can imagine that's going to look pretty weird through the video. Likewise, if you're doing a longer form film and you've got people going from location to location to location, and you don't have the shots to help you transition between locations, and you're lacking those, well, how can you tell a desired story with continuity? It's going to be pretty difficult. That's across the macro level, across the entirety of a story, but it can also be the same for a specific scene. If you're shooting in a certain location and you don't get enough shots of that specific scene, well, then you've either just lost that entire scene that you now have to cut out, and then you have to redo the entire storyline around not having that scene, or you need to go back and have to reshoot that. And if you reshoot that, that's going to mean you're going to get more budget, possibly. You've got to lose more time. You've got to push back delivery dates and distribution dates. You've got to pull away staff from their work. There's this, it goes on, right? The catalase goes on pretty much, right? That's not the right word, but you can understand what I'm trying to say. It just goes on and on and on and on. And there's a chain of events that occurs, but it all comes from not having those shots in the first place. That's one of the major possibilities. The second one, which kind of links into this as well, is no continuity. The idea behind producing a short form video or a long form video is all about creating a story, telling a story. And you want to have the story flow from scene to scene, from shot to shot, for everything to follow each other. And it should all make sense. But if you don't do that thorough planning in the scripting, you don't do the thorough planning in the storyboarding or the shot list creation, it could leave some major gaps in the flow, which means the story may fall apart. It may no longer make sense. And again, it goes back to those key details we touched on before. It's going to mean more shooting time to get the shots that you need. It's going to mean delays. It's going to mean extra budgets required, loss of time, pulling away staff from work, etc. It all adds up very, very quickly. And likewise with that, another possibility is an incoherent story structure. If you've got an underdeveloped script, you could create a confusing narrative or message. Or on the flip side of things, if you've just done a script really, really quickly and you haven't really put much thought into it, well, maybe you've got too many messages. So there's those two extremes. You've got the one side where it is underdeveloped, there's not enough message in there. And on the other side of things, you could also have too many messages where it's becoming overwhelming for the person watching the film or the video, and they don't know what to feel. They don't know what to do. They don't know what action to take. They can't gather the message from your company. That's going to mean a lack of cut through. It's going to mean a lack of connection on either of those extremes. And that's not obviously an ideal situation you want to be in. If we're looking at a marketing team who's undertaking all this pre-production process and the production and the post-production, well, that could also mean an unsatisfied executive team or an unsatisfied marketing team. It's going to mean failure to meeting the goals. It's going to mean failure to meeting standards, failure to use your marketing funds in an effective and efficient manner. It could mean endless revisions, more time lost, pushing back those delivery dates. All of this comes together, and it's not a fantastic reflection on you, your staff, your marketing team. And people do lose their jobs over this stuff. If you do a really poor job, that's the potential consequence of losing your job. It's something to consider. So this is why pre-production is so important. The pre-production is there to identify possible errors that can occur later on and resolve those issues before they can pop up. That is the whole idea behind pre-production. If you just walk into the production, you get the camera out, you get the lights, you get the audio, and you go, all right, let's shoot this thing. Everyone's standing there saying, well, what are we doing? We don't know. What are we doing? Where's the guide for this? No one knows. Likewise, if you get to post-production and the editor sits down and they say, all right, I've got this footage, I've got this audio, looks great, sounds great, perfect. How am I piecing it together? They're going to struggle if they don't have a direction around the strategy, so how it needs to feel and sound and what forth. But if they're not understanding how it all goes together because you haven't done the pre-production properly, well, that means they've got to sit in meetings, they've got to go through, have discussions with your team to say, all right, well, how are we piecing this together? And it goes back again, extra time, budget, etc. And all of that all together is not an ideal circumstance. So those are a few of those possibilities and consequences to just keep in mind when it comes to pre-production. Get it right in the first place, do it right, do it thoroughly, and then later on, things should fall in place. It's nothing worse than opening up a project to edit and you realize you're missing shots, or there's not a coherent storyline structure, or there's too many messages, or there's not enough messages, or the story just doesn't make sense. There's nothing worse than having that happen. And pre-production, the entire role behind that is to avoid having consequences later on, to avoid problems, resolve them as early as possible. As I mentioned at the start of the show, the earlier you can identify and resolve a problem when it comes to video production, the better. And that is the number one takeaway that I'd like you to take away from this morning's event. It's been a jam-packed half an hour full of information. I'm sure you're probably sitting there a little bit overwhelmed with how much was shared, but I encourage you to come back and watch it again afterwards, because there's some really important steps in here around those 11 pre-production steps And then even before you hit that pre-production, that strategy component, so critical. Why are you producing the video in the first place? What is the reason behind producing the video? Who are you trying to target? What do you want them to feel? What action do you want them to take after watching the video? You need to get a grasp on these things even before you hit the pre-production components. So thank you for your time this morning. We're bang on 10:30, which is always a good thing. If you have any questions, please do feel free to send them through now, and I'm more than happy to answer them. Otherwise, if you want to send through a DM as well, please do so. I'll review the question within the chat on LinkedIn. But thank you for your time and for listening. And as I said there, the key takeaway: identify and resolve problems early on in the video production process so that they don't cause major hurdles for you later on. And with that said, thank you very much for listening and for watching this morning. And I look forward to catching up with you in May for the next live event. Until then, thanks very much and enjoy your Tuesday. Cheers.